The automobile is getting increasingly softwareized, and much of it driven by the ADAS megatrend with the ultimate goal of autonomous driving. And this megatrend also provides big opportunity for ER&D, that's engineering R&D organizations. And India, being a very strong global hub for software technology, is really picking up a lot of opportunities, tapping them, and developing a lot of solutions, cutting-edge technologies for the global industry as well. Hello and welcome to ETAuto Technology Talks. We have a very interesting panel of distinguished industry leaders who will talk about the ADAS megatrend and also how the ER&D industry is paving the way for the increased level of adoption of autonomous driving technologies. And we will also talk about the overall softwareization trend in the industry. So without further ado, let me introduce a panel of distinguished guests, starting with K.S. Vishwanathan, who is the Vice President, Industry Initiative at NASSCOM. Next to him is Thomas Mueller from Wipro. Then we have Debashish Neogi from Renault Nissan Tech. We have Mr. Raghuraman Ayaswamy from TCS. And then we have Jacob Peter from Bosch. And we have Ashish Khushu next to me from L&T Engineering Services. So gentlemen, thank you very much for taking time out to be part of this discussion. Interesting times indeed. KSV, just very broad overview. Indian ER&D industry is growing at a good pace. And within that, I believe automotive is a big driver. Could you throw some light on what are the projections? I believe overall you are expected to clock a revenue about $45 billion this year.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the opportunity. I'll just give a slightly larger perspective. As everyone else is claiming, India today is poised with the fastest growing economy in the world. Imagine this, as I say, when rest of the world is saying possible recession, except a recession, the aircraft industry from India is saying we're going to buy 500 aircrafts in the next 2 years. India has already launched a 6G Alliance program, and 5G is getting rolled out by December in possibly every town in the country. And telecom industry is also getting into a partnership with several ecosystem players. All of them put together having an interplay and how the automobile industry will be taking it further. With that, the Indian ER&D industry is poised to be a $45 billion industry by end of 2024 estimated, if the trend continues what it is going on. And in that, the automobile segment will be approximately about 12 to 14%. It is the dominant segment, and perhaps there are close to about 80,000 to 90,000 people in the industry, the tech industry, working for the automobile segment in the country, making the largest ecosystem in the world for tech automobile ecosystem.
Right. Okay. Great. And the projection for 2030, the opportunity overall for ER&D, what it's pegged at anywhere up to what, $170 billion?
Yeah, so if you do a slightly broader picture, the total ER&D market currently worldwide is about $1.2 trillion.
Okay.
It is poised to grow at 7 to 8%, perhaps reach about $1.8 billion. They currently, out of the total $1.2 trillion market, around $220 billion to $250 billion gets outsourced. Thanks to the awareness that more and more outsourcing could take place both by GCCs and by the partners to them, the service providers, this 220 is expected to rise up to close about 670 to 700 billion opportunity. Right. Even assuming we maintain the same growth rate or the market share what we have, that is a minimum of 130 billion. And if all the aspirations that all of us working hard together, including the ecosystem, there's an opportunity for us to go the ER&D to 170. So on behalf of my industry, I'll put my neck out for 130. We all do well, perhaps we'll celebrate. But one thing I assure you, by 2028, all of us will be celebrating an 100 billion mark from the ER&D industry from the country.
That's good to know.
That's
100 billion
key
by
milestone.
2028. And Debashish, since you also represent an OEM, your center, the India Tech Center, I mean, it completed 15 years of existence. I believe increasingly you are playing a more critical role across all domains, but mainly on the autonomous driving technologies also. Could you throw some light on how is it progressing? Because some say that while autonomous driving is one of the case megatrends or ACES megatrends, it has progressed slower than expected, whereas digitalization, like connected tech and all, has grown faster than expected.
Sumantra, I would say that coming to my center, autonomous driving is one of the pole of competence, as I say. So we have system and software engineers who are working hand in hand with our global engineering for ADAS technologies, and mainly we are working on various scenario building and also testing the software for various used cases of the customer. And then we are trying to fix the bugs and update the software. So that's how we are working collaboratively with our counterparts in France. And coming to ADAS, of course, there was a huge enthusiasm when ADAS first surfaced out, but I think some pragmatism has come, mainly because I think if you talk of US market or Europe market, mostly they are at ADAS level 2, as we say, which is basically assisting the driver and giving some assistance in terms of longitudinal stability or transversal stability. But I would say we are lot of miles to go before it will be eyes off and hands off situation, right? We still have to navigate this situation, but I think a lot yet to come. And from an India perspective, the challenges are even different. The Indian market is really picking up. Many cars in the last 1 year, they have started introducing assistance, and maybe this will grow. But the challenge of Indian market and the driving conditions makes it a very unique proposition where a lot of local engineering will have to fine tune the ADAS algorithms in order to adapt to the Indian driving conditions. That's where the local engineering centers will play a major role, how it can be adapted to the Indian driving conditions.
As a global CTO of another global tier 1 major told me, I mean, if the system works well enough in India, it can work anywhere in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Jacob, at Bosch, I mean, the BGS, BGSW is also global. It's headquartered in India and it has centers elsewhere also. And you do a lot of global projects. So, what's the current trend in terms of the ADAS progression? How do you see it progressing in terms of basis? What customers across the world, how they're seeing it in terms of what is possible from an engineering perspective, and what is the kind of run rate do you expect?
Yeah, I think Debashish brought in rightly. When we say ADAS, it is a broad-based set of technologies that's coming under it. All of us think of level 5, which is full autonomy, where there is no driver involved. That's a long way off. Neither do we see it happening in the next 5 years at least. But there are other areas of ADAS which is already in the market, like ADAS level 2 you told. Key is what value does it give it to the consumer and what is he willing to pay for it and how much of investments go into it.
But as of then, it looks like that's the driving factor, because whoever I talk to, if I talk to a Hyundai or a Mahindra, because they are the ones in the volume segment who have offered at least in a couple of variants. Those variants are flying off the shelf.
L2, right? You're talking about L2 and L2 plus. Definitely. That's a big plus in the market right now. And Debashish brought in the point of adapting to Indian conditions. And that's one thing that many of ER&D, even we are working on, So you adapt a global technology like an AEB, a radar-based ACC. An AEB is a very interesting use case, emergency braking. You don't want an AEB to come in at the wrong time because it could really upset and it could cause harm. So you need to really look at all the objects that could potentially come in a road and what can be seen in a western road and what can be seen in an Indian road is completely different. The vehicle to vehicle distance in India is almost impossible to imagine in a western world. So that adapting, I think, can only be done by Indian engineers, and a lot of work is happening on the Indian context around it. On a global level, we still feel an autonomy of level 4 is possible, and we have some use cases where we have tied up with one of the OEs to do complete autonomous parking. We and Mercedes tied up and we showcased it in the Stuttgart. So that is in a very smart environment, controlled environment where the infrastructure is smart. You press a button, the car goes and parks in a parking lot. Full autonomy. The vehicle need not be, the driver need not be manned. Need not be manned. Coming to the kind of work that we do, the whole thrust on autonomous driving has brought in a fundamental shift in the architecture. What we call as EE architecture, electrical and electronics architecture of a car, that is undergoing a change. From a multitude of microcontroller based systems, we are moving to a more microprocessor based, very strong compute. And when you have so much of hardware power in the car, the software architecture changes.
So HPC, edge computing.
Right.
In fact, those are topics
So because of this, the kind of talent that we are looking at and the kind of people that are coming into the industry are changing. And that's a big work we do. We do a lot of work around convergence systems, high compute systems, and also on the ADAS systems, both on AI and data engineering. These are the areas that we do, and we see that element of work increasing, especially in India, because two reasons. One, that talent is not available in bulk anywhere in the world. So we are working on getting the AI talent tuned to automotive industry, and that is a growth area that we still.
In fact, even at this level also, even though autonomous driving has not really kind of reached anywhere close to critical scale, there is already a talent crunch felt by industry players, and I'm sure the organizations like NASSCOM are new initiatives to kind of address that issue. But we'll come to that. Raghu, what Jake about, because of the changing requirements at the vehicle level, at the platform level, the platform itself is getting redefined, and so automobiles are getting now software-defined vehicles. The architecture is changing at the very basic fundamental level. Therefore, the need for more advanced computing, high power, high performance computing, edge computing. But throw some light on to what magnitude is the change that is happening, and how are you meeting those requirements?
I think, as he rightly said, now the software-defined vehicle, especially to build these autonomous features, is becoming more and more compute intensive. So because what is happening today is when you are looking at using cameras as well as what they call as lidars to detect objects that are in front of a car, and then after the image is processed, it has to be the algorithms have to work in milliseconds to decide there is an object in the front and the car has to stop immediately. So this is putting a lot of compute intensity on the car. So the architecture therefore needs to provide for what we call as high performance compute within the car. So there are many semiconductor vendors such as NVIDIA, Qualcomm, many of these people are coming out with specific chips that supports this autonomous car.
So
some of them.
The industry is moving to a stage wherein, let's say, you cannot use a gaming chip to meet
it is very specific chips. It is more design. Of course, there is a lot of learning from the GPU technology that get adapted to an autonomous car environment, but it is custom chips essentially made for autonomous car.
It's also called system on chip.
System on chip. And these SoCs, they call a system on chip, they come with varied capacities. For example, it can go from 250 tops to 1500 tops to all the way to 2000 tops. So depending upon what kind of autonomy you want inside the car. So the whole ER&D ecosystem in India today is how do we really get those system on chips reference architectures? How do we build the algorithms on top of it? And then how do we customize that in the case of, say, a brand like Mercedes, or if it is to be done in Tata Motors, if it is to be done in some other OEMs? How do we really, Nissan, how do we really make that work in respective car environment? So that is a huge system integration opportunity, and that is where I think a lot of us are focusing today.
For TCS, automotive has been a sector you have catered to for quite some time now.
Yes.
But I would assume that now perhaps the growth curve is slightly steeper in terms of the business from the automotive related sector. Could you throw some light on how big is the automotive play for you now?
Yeah, actually from larger TCS, we do a lot of work in the automotive segment. Manufacturing for TCS is close to around 10% of our revenues. Within that, automotive is one of the major segment. Of course, that covers many of the solutions like IT. But within engineering, my business, automotive constitutes almost like 25% of our business. And that really is growing because of the opportunities coming with electronics architecture, software-defined vehicle, connected car, and many of these.
At 25%, would it be the single largest? Or
It will be the largest vertical within our engineering domain.
All right. Thomas, he spoke about the need for even high-intensive, advanced computing, more computing power. What kind of solutions are being developed currently, again, including, let's say, by Wipro, to kind of cater to this requirement in the transportation sector or in the mobility sector?
Well, let me quickly reflect where we are from our perspective in the ADAS journey. ADAS has some notable success in terms of safety systems, but also has notable disappointment in terms of its capabilities. Let's start with a simple user experience fact that these systems are often annoying users. That's still a matter of fact today. Depends on which segment you look at a car from a B segment up. There is a lot of annoyance that comes out of these systems where people just look for the button to turn it off, and this button is now hidden in submenus or is completely gone, depends on the product. So that does, from an end user perspective, not really help you. You can't get rid of those features anymore because they're legally mandated by NCAP and other regulations. And we haven't been able to do these isolated little systems, the camera with integrated processing that comes from a supplier, to really tune them to the user experience that is overall expected, because they were isolated island solutions that not really work together as a concert. The second thing that the industry, from my outside perspective, has not shared over a decade is data. So there's only two companies today on the route to, call it, automated and autonomous driving that really own data at scale. And that's Google and Waymo, and that's Tesla. These are the ones. And then there is a long gap of nothing in the market, and there is a lot of little silo piled up of data generated by test fleets of a few hundred cars each in certain market that are being used to basically try to extract valuable information from post-processing. So there's a fundamental system design issue that we observe in these systems. It starts with the heterogeneity of the stack in the car. It starts with the fact that cars don't have a common sensing stack. A thing that sounds, trivial to achieve, it's complex, of course, it's a brownfield, but let's say the mix of sensors between a radar sensor, a camera, and the esoterically expensive LiDAR sensor, I'll get to this, is a bit provocative, and the lack of software intelligence on radar. We believe that having a common sensing stack is the first and foremost priority for any OEM to have on a vehicle. And only a few, I can basically count them on the fingers of my hand, are moving there with SOPs in the next 3 years to have a common sensing stack. Is it affordable for every car? That's the next challenge. How do you build a, let's say, $300 sensing stack that is capable of level 3? We're not talking level 4 and level 5 for this. It's very complex, and LiDAR is not in that equation easily. So there's a philosophical question, how do you get there? And we believe that software-defined radar is a key area where we're investing in. So we have, invested into companies that are building software-defined solutions, which basically put classes onto a standard $30 radar sensor from Texas Instruments and make it a high-res 4D imaging sensor that typically costs around $200. So there is a great opportunity, and we don't need specific microprocessors and controllers in that sensor because we put it onto our vehicle server. Vehicles, in our vision, have a hyperconverged infrastructure. That's what we do in a data center for the last 2 decades, since VMware, rise to fame in data centers. But in cars, we have today discrete islands of combinations of microprocessors and microcontrollers, which are not really evolving as a coherent compute architecture. So the next thing is to move to a vehicle architecture that gives me enough compute to grow and to address a simple business problem that we get asked by OEMs. They ask us a simple challenge: can you help us build a car that stays 10 years digitally relevant? Or in other words, how do you evergreen a car without putting so much compute in that the car becomes too expensive, but that gives you enough room to grow for features that you don't even think of today or in the next 5 years? So that's where ADAS comes in. And the sharing of data, in my opinion, given that Tesla and Waymo are light years ahead of everyone else when it comes to data. If the industry does not work together, if OEMs don't collaborate on this, we'll have a hard time to achieve that target.
So therefore, are you saying that there is a case for maybe standardization of certain
Heterogeneity of autonomous driving stacks. Most of the autonomous projects so far, that sounds a bit black and white, have failed. Argo AI was just recently dismantled between Volkswagen and Ford. That's about 12 months ago. What? Not for success. So the teams have been absorbed. We try to rescue the assets that came out of this. But ultimately, most of those autonomous projects have widely failed in the market and now being reintegrated because the 2020 timeline was not met even closely by anyone. So now the disillusion in management and CXOs is that this has not worked out. How do we monetize it? That's why I'm not even looking into level 4. We're realistically looking into making money with comfort functions, which is anywhere between L2 plus and L3 in certain markets as regulation permits. And these regulations are really difficult to obtain if you look at all the overhead with observability, etc. And then we're crippled with ghost braking. For example, we have this example. Lots of brands are, shocking their users with, sudden actions that are hardly traceable. And an inherent system design flaw, in my opinion, if I may say as a CTO, is that some of these systems are designed as fire and forget solutions. They're one-way roads. The engineer writes an algorithm, deploys it to the field, it causes malfunctions or false positives, but the engineer or the engineering team does never even get noticed that these faults are in the field because the back channel is missing in the product too often. So there's some conceptual things that I think we can rethink moving to SDV architectures to really get things straight. And the collaboration on data is a huge opportunity that I encourage all of our customers really to think hard about. And that's between suppliers, of course, and between OEMs. It's not just that they're alone in this. The suppliers are heavily needed. We've seen a lot of failures with OEMs who said, we're going to do it all ourselves. We don't, rely on suppliers.
So collaboration has to be at a totally different level altogether. In a different nature as well, right?
And it's still a mantra of the hour. If you listen to some of the CXO recently, they also want to bring everything in-house. In North America, we have a lot of high-tech leaders now in charge that are running that from an Apple background and a Tesla background that believe everything has to come in-house. We have Europe, where the largest car maker had some issues by bringing everything in-house. So we see that the role of suppliers is hugely important, the domain expertise, but the collaboration model is anything but optimal at the moment. There's hugely lengthy round trips between requirement specification and getting things and changes done.
And also the trust factor. Sharing of data, things like that, it becomes very, very critical, right?
The only successful swarm data solution in the market, let's face it, is road experience monitoring, RAM, from Mobileye. They're the only ones who put this into the market cross OEMs since 2015 by basically trading off exchange of data that is masked, so it's basically unpersonalized data, in exchange for a discount on the product. And that's how they got to build a service that actually is really useful, that gives you a driveline on a road that has no lane markers, for example.
Ashish, at L&T, how big a team is dedicated for automotive and specifically for ADAS? And sometime back, if I'm not wrong, you showcased, you had a concept car showcasing the capability. What level of capabilities have you developed at in-house, and what who are catering to currently?
So transportation as a business segment is approximately 25% of the business, is very huge. Yeah, very closely in very business that we do. And on the AD side, ADAS side, SDV side, I'd just like to share with you what we think and how that's changing the course or influencing the way we are going about our investments. There are multiple layers to this discussion. I don't, with taking a politically incorrect statement, I don't think in my lifetime I'll see L5 and I'm not going to bother about investing for L5. But I do see a fantastic opportunity when you're talking SDVs. Unfortunately, the hype around SDVs is again not going to the core of what are the opportunities that this SDV discussion can address. And that is something that Thomas alluded to. You look at a car as a data center, but on wheels. That's the Z axis.
Yeah.
You out to build an architecture which will last, which will be secure, which has to be standard, which has to be harmonized, which has to look at the way you build a normal data center in a bank of the highest possible criticality and 100% availability. I mean, you can have banks 5 nights, but car you ought to have 100%. When you start looking at it from that perspective, you then start seeing the complexity. You have car networks, 4 or 5 networks in the car. You ought to make a car which is going to remain relevant for years to come. When you say digital, it is not something that is going to be built for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. It ought to be, it ought to give an experience to a customer for a very long period of time.
And keep them very comfortable.
And at the end of it, it's user experience. Everything has to be looked at it from a user experience perspective. And last but not the least, I mean, there are many layers, so I just don't go too much into it. Is these ADAS features or AD features, I don't want it. So why do I pay for it? I don't want a seat which has the function of being which I can heat. I don't need it in Bangalore. I may need it in Delhi. But why do I pay for it? Why do I pay for a car for a seat, driver seat which is so intelligent when a chauffeur is driving or I have a driver. You out to look at the opportunities SUVs provide you, like feature on demand or paying for the feature that I want to use. Now they look very simple, but once you start integrating all of these things together, that's where whatever Thomas was talking about completely is to. I think what is going to happen in STV once a lot of noise settles down is it has to have a relook at architectures, it has to have a relook at standardization, and more importantly, look at making many things intelligent, including the sensors. I mean, you're not talking of the sensors which got deployed on car 5 years back, which were down. You're getting into an era of sensors which are going to be intelligent with so much of compute real estate. Why can't inference not happen at that particular edge itself? So what would it take? 18, 20 sensors. How do you have better sensor fusion capability? So there's a whole lot of stuff that's going to happen when you go deeper into SDVs, from an architecture right down to application, keeping the user experience in the center and ensuring that you give the user what the user wants at the time he wants and charging only for that. So when you have these type of things going on, obviously it becomes very difficult. Where do you want to invest and how do you want to invest? So our investment strategy for autonomous, after the demo card that we showed you and others, is of shifting to looking at some of these things. And that's where we are investing, so that we will be able to have a slightly more sustained and relevant discussions with UAVs. They can't do without partners. It's very right.
Today, collaboration is no longer an option. It's the name of the game in the mobility industry. And now Bosch, at VGSW, Jacob, tell us at your company, currently how many SDV programs you may be working on? And many experts say that 2023 will be a critical year because perhaps largest number of SDVs will start rolling out this year with SOP, say sometime in 2025 or so.
So term of SDV can anywhere go between a simple photo that most of the cars are going to have. Flashing over the update is more or less now going to be a norm. So most of the vehicles that we are working on has that feature over their update. So the question on how many SDV programs are we working on depends on how we define SDV itself. And as most of the gentlemen here told, that is it's for a industry and a transformation from a technology standpoint. There is no convergence on it. How would, other than the OTA part, the other part of the architecture shifts, what value does it bring to the consumer? How would you architect in a way that the extra cost that you put in?
So you also feel that there needs to be collective kind of brainstorming and some kind of
Yeah, so what we feel, our feeling the way it would emerge is from an architectural layering, there would be much more like autos are, what's the de facto standard for microcontrollers. We have adaptive autos are coming in for the compute world, but beyond that, when the things move on to the cloud and there has to be a seamless working between the automobile and the cloud, you need standards. There are standards in COVISA that are coming, which help in how to architect a middleware so that the people can collaborate on it. So what did AutoSAR enable? AutoSAR enabled the standardization of the way software. So multiple people can collaborate on the top. Now, at which level would collaboration happen? In my view, that is where the collaboration would happen. And we can, I completely agree. Function may be given by the best person who understands that and at the best price. While there will be companies which can go closer to hardware and create a base software and give it as a full product. And there is also this challenge of OEs trying to wanting to be software company, right? Everybody wants to be a software company. And there have been some software car manufacturers who have done this full stack. But because it worked for them, it doesn't really not work for everybody. Because for that car manufacturer, it was ground up. It was a new company. But for many of us, we are transitioned from a classic mode to a software-based world. So the question whether we need partners, the answer is yes. We all need partners and we need to work together. We need to understand how can we work together. How will the architecture facilitate people to work together? So more than just the intent or an emotional need to work together, architecture should facilitate. Because at the end of the day, you can't expect 4 or 3 OEs to come together and increase that. It's not going to happen. It's a very competitive world. The only way that will happen is when there are architectural standardization that will happen, and on top of that, multiple people can work. And that has been done in multiple industries, and even automotive industries have done it. So now in the compute world, that change is happening, that transformation is happening, and that's the reason why we see this slight confusion that many of us are expressing. But it will get sorted out in the next 3-4 years.
and you really said that AutoSAR stands as a good example.
Adaptive AutoSAR is coming in, which is compute, but that's not enough. Because that will only solve at one layer. Because the world is shifting to a very seamless working between the car and you mentioned data center, the cloud, and where would the processing take place and what would be the mode of working. Those kind of things must be sorted out, and there could be a leader which should show the world. And there are so many forums where OEs and tier ones are working together to make this happen.
Yeah.
I think
just when we are saying, at least that's what I interpret, when you're talking of standards, you're not expecting everybody to have the same implementation of the architecture. You're really talking of something like AutoSAR. We said, that everybody will have the same template of what a car.
Right. So you think that the platform can be standardized, and then based on that, depending on what your
Platform as in
brand,
this, some software components, etc.
And I would just like to complement what he was saying about the collaboration and putting the subject matter experts. So I give an example of Renault SDV program. It's a very classic example where for the operating system, it is the Google operating system. But when you talk of the high processing computing, it's Qualcomm. They partnered with Qualcomm. And then for the digital cluster and other electronic components, it's with the Valeo. So why I'm quoting this example is that it's a classic example where the subject matter experts are collaborating with the OEMs in a harmonious way to conceive the SDV for the cars to come. So that's how one of the models could evolve, but not trying to do everything in-house, but working with the experts.
Which is right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and there may be one set of OEMs who may not subscribe
Yeah.
or not, who will not be aligned with the technologies Qualcomm subscribing to. So in that case,
So I think the key building blocks to really achieve the softwareization that we're looking for, there is not a single route to this, and there's always a trade-off between standardization and velocity. So if you look at the EV market leader Tesla, they probably have the least standardization on such things like AUTOSAR. I think AUTOSAR in a current Model Y is neglectably small, and Tesla is going to beat it out by the next generation completely, moving to 48 volts already. But that means when I look at the opportunity with SDV, it starts first of all basic principles we did in other enterprise applications. When we disaggregated the mainframe, we first of all took all the functions and hide them behind APIs. So the APIification was the first step that every signal, every actuation becomes a service and a traceable. So on this service catalog, which ultimately makes that product, in this case a car, but it could be another product, accessible, that's the starting point. And then we can build really the logics that allow also third parties to go this route. 2 years ago, I spoke about the idea that I could use hardware from one OEM and combine it with a downloadable function that would actuate the vehicle that comes from a third party, not necessarily the OEM or a supplier, but from a third party ISV. I was called this is unthinkable, this is never going to happen. Example is an autonomous valet parking function. So let's say I live in Shanghai and someone locally develops my Shanghai parking function and I can download it to my BMW vehicle. Today, it's unthinkable because of functional safety requirements, da-di-da-di-da. But what if we have an architecture that allows us to really create value on software that not only puts entertainment apps out into a car, but actually gives me the ability to change the way that the product feels and drives. Downloadable functions. If I have a BMW drive function downloadable onto the hardware of another OEM. Today, unthinkable. But I believe in the future we will have that openness. That's the ecosystem that we've seen evolve in the mobile world today.
like how I just download something from Play Store and start
Exactly.
using a particular feature.
Exactly, and this is where, of course, there's a lot of interest in to protect how the product feels. The discussion around CarPlay 2 at Apple, is a good example of how protective or not protective you want to be, and go with customer-led approaches or go with OEM-led approaches. It's almost religious, but I believe it's fundamentally once the product is API-ified, the market will automatically open and become an ecosystem.
And that's a very important point. In the software world, it will be API strategy which will matter the most. That's it. You have to start with that in mind. Now, the moment you say your car is going to be like a consumer product or a software product,
gadget.
these questions are inevitable. They are.
Yeah.
I mean, if I want to use a feature which is available in his Play Store, why not? So I think we get there. But the point again is that when you look at SDV and you don't look at SDV from a perspective of automotive and you see here is another software-led product being designed, or software product being designed, then you have to have an API strategy and then it starts opening up doors for many permutation combinations. And that's where this whole importance on architecture, scalability, experience, when you break them down into smaller granular parts, these are the type of questions you will have to start figuring out.
Yeah.
You don't have a way out of this.
I mean, is TCS being it's such a huge software industry player? Are you working on those lines from what?
Yeah, see, I think it's very interesting discussion, especially if you look at, you can segregate this SDV into 2 parts. One that looks at the car part of it, autonomous driving, if there is an electric vehicle charge management, and all of that. The other part looks at the experience part of it, as a gadget. So what you enjoy in your phone or a smart device, how we can do it. So if you look at this API part, this is not new to a software company. It is not being invented today in SD. API has been there in airlines. API has been
Everywhere.
there in many systems, banking systems. And when you build a banking mobile app, how do I split the cost of dinner with few people? How do I credit to the banking apps? They've been done in the same API or SOA-based API architecture, right? So what is important to look at is, we call in TCS, this is a purpose-centric ecosystem. So if what ecosystem you want to gather, like in the car, you may want to get an insurance company systems or a banking system or entertainment systems. So these are all the apps I want the car to provide me so that I can take that experience broader from the car user perspective. So the API will provide all of that. You can automatically subscribe to insurance. You can do your banking using voice commands from the car itself, and you can perhaps order a ticket or something for the concert in the evening and pay from the car as you drive. So these systems will be very linked on the API systems. But the whole discussion around ADAS is very different, because that is, you are dealing with car movements and you have to communicate to the hardware in the car. So it has further side of elements.
That's
that
specific
adds
to
a hardware
mobility.
integration.
This is more as a
Let me put a devil's advocate to this. When I suggested that you could buy hardware from vendor one and driver assistance software from vendor B in 2020, I was called crazy, literally. In 2023, in June, Elon Musk confirmed that they are in talks with OEMs to bring autopilot as a license to them. And that's basically what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so just taking a see, at least I belong to that school of thought. So far, you giving features what you think people want. I think we need to realize we're over that era now.
Yeah.
If you're going to spend 4 hours in a car, I was reading somewhere a few years back that the average number of hours people spend in cities in a car was 2.5 to 3 hours every day. They go to 4.5 in a couple of 4 hours in a car. 4 hours in a car. I mean, what about my experience? I don't need a particular feature like a braking system in India or maybe in many other cities. What is it that I need? Now, when you're looking at user experience and putting user experience at the center of your design, things start changing. You can shove whatever features you want to, but that's not the way it's going to get done. And I think in the case of autonomous, that's exactly what happened. A lot of technology excitement was getting pushed into the car, irrespective of what you want, or you don't want to pay, or you want, or you don't want. But now here is the situation. I am used to experience which is fantastic on my phone, on my TV, wherever I go. So I need the same experience in my car. Now talk to me about what are you going to do to deliver me that. That is another area which starts influencing design criteria.
I'll give you an example. The new Hyundai Ioniq 5. It's a product I had recently the pleasure to drive, the Ioniq 5N, which is an electric version. It's a standard electric car, but what they've done is with N, they basically put a software skin over it that makes it feel like a fun, hot hatchback combustion engine car, mimicking gearbox shifts, gear 1 to 7. You can go all the way through it. The torque is building up, so the car behaves and sounds like a funny 4-cylinder hot hatchback, as we say in the UK. And it is amazing to drive. It's amazing fun. So you can skin basically a standard cat in many different ways. And this is where really the fun comes in through software defined. And this
I think one thing we are missing out in this discussion, when there is a certain amount of romanticization around SDV and autonomous vehicle, fundamentally, I was just reading Times of India today, and there was an article on the number of deaths in India. It's 1.6 lakhs, and the injured are around 4 lakhs. Now, if you look at a country like India, with the highways getting broadened out and people going at reasonably good speeds anywhere, we have to recognize that safety is the paramount thing. That we absolutely. And somehow, when you talk about SDVs and autonomous driving, the cockpit comes into play, Apple AirPlay, and all that, the gizmos that you want. Underlying features, we call it ASIL D compliant. When it comes to an ASIL D compliance, even if it is something like an AEB or an L2 feature, and you look at it from a safety angle, we were talking to people doing a campaign around the accidents that were happening and trying to plow back as to what features could really help. Let's take trucks. We talk so much about past vehicles, we just forget that category called trucks. And we have drivers working long hours. and driving at night. AEB is a feature that will protect lives. There is no question about it. Imagine you are in the highway and a truck driver makes a mistake. You are in the fast car. If the truck has an AEB, it will brake.
Coming to India,
Yeah.
in a matured market, mostly all of them will have L1, L2, but here it's a very diverse market. So you may drive a car and have a sudden braking, but the car at the behind may not have anything. So the problem is when you, that's where the tuning comes into picture. If you brake it too hard,
Yeah.
there is no response
Right.
time for them. So
Yeah.
sort of you have to ease
Right.
and stop sufficiently with the time before you hit the target. So those adaptations are very important. Otherwise, a safe feature can be very unsafe.
That's what he said. No, if we can solve a car for Indian condition, rest of the world because
Drowsiness detection. Super feature that can help everybody, especially in long-driven vehicles.
As I said, the best case scenario is best case feature in terms of the valid offer is preventing an accident from happening. So I think
If the product is not calibrated for Indian market, I had this experience being picked up in an import car at the airport and driven. As long as the road was open, it worked fine. As soon as the car was in traffic, it was a brand new car. The driver had no experience with the ADAS system. That thing would not move. It was an emergency braking all the time, and basically it makes sudden brakes, and the driver had no idea what was happening. So that's lack of calibration, obviously, and I had to tell him actually where he could find in the submenu the button to turn the feature set off, so he could actually continue driving. So that
And
is-
once the regulation comes in place, you cannot have this button to switch it off also. And it is coming because we are following European regulations. That's the big challenge we have.
yeah. Therefore, I think from a regulatory perspective, also it needs to be India needs to be looked at in its entirety independently, perhaps, right?
I mean, also the system of road participants is extremely complex.
Our Indians, the young engineers are in the book condo. They go to the accident sites and the average service such as along with Dawson, but this actually very base of here. And being mapped to the technology, the potential is also.
Yeah.
But that's what we need to do. We should not just blindly watch servers of that bringing into the mind of technology is the bringing that adaptation. But let's just put it right here. Maybe if you let's say that can put it through like gold for us.
And in fact, I know of someone from the industry who was traveling in China, wherein at a fairly high speed, and that car had AEB, and it worked because the car in front did a sudden braking, but the car behind, perhaps it had AEB, and it came and it had it. Fortunately, there was no major injury, but the car was kind of damaged.
Well, that's where V2X, is something that we keep harping on for decades now.
I mean, that's a topic for another discussion another day. And indeed, gentlemen, very interesting times, very exciting and challenging at some level, perhaps a little bit of unpredictable scenario also. In all this, KSV, challenging as it may be scenario, but big opportunities to tap for the ER&D industry, right?
after hearing all these gentlemen, I think I should revise my number. Opportunities more. Perhaps what we are now touching is in this world itself, low-hanging fruit. Many more complexities are yet to be explored.
Sky is the limit.
Sky is the limit.
Last words from each one of you gentlemen, starting with Ashish. We are in 2023 with a horizon of say 25 or let's say 28 or 30. How big do you expect automotive to be here? This automotive group mobility and please.
Very big. Very important.
And with the interplay of all the associated technologies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It has a huge impact on many other associated businesses. So we expect it to continue to treat us on toes in terms of capability, competency, and as it becomes more complex in terms of trying to solve the problem to be discussed, we need to develop expertise at various levels and getting people from different domains, which was not the case 4 5 years ago. So we think it's going to really have a huge impact on the rest as well. Uh, Jacob, the 5G, the onset of 5G, how will it influence the adoption of ADAS or any other kind of new technologies which will be there in the SDV?
So, in my view, an ADAS riddle at the higher ends, level 4, level 5, would be solved only through smart infrastructure. And 5G is smart infrastructure and also the capability communication. And this tandem, 5G, 6G, along with smart infrastructure, would be the way that countries like India can focus on in every we are just interested. So we can actually get a start to architect a plan. It is here, visual thinking is all each topic. Did it for us, or you're from Bharat or
6.
no other country in the world did it. But
The world record is sort
the world record of 7 is it free of that. So we have that power of implementation, has the technology power to do it. So we need trees. And 5G smart infrastructure could be a way that we could tilt and go in a completely rather than just trying for full autonomy, all packed in a box.
India as a base for developing these new age solutions, software driven solutions, or the mobility industry. From the global automotive industry perspective, where do you see India, say, in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, especially, I think India can play a great role in this adaptation of this daily connected car and all the ecosystem, because all of that at the end of the day requires a lot of software, hardware integration, and system integration. And India has now we are building capabilities in artificial intelligence, and some of these new things which are also coming, like generative AI, also has huge influence on this daily area. Given that our software focus, I think India would perhaps be the #1 destination for HDV and connected car and for the ecosystem development.
And the 25% in your overall engineering, in the share of it, you see it going up. And also, by the way, your team strength. Now, at what rate is it growing?
Team is scaling. I think the overall pie will increase, but of course our overall business also will increase. So I think it will be, obviously it will grow for sure, as KSV is setting the target for all of us.
And has revised the target. He has revised the target also.
Yes, also trying to revise it. So I think, but more than that, I think we have a very unique position to play a leading role as a country in this.
While the opportunities are there and the talent capabilities, of course, the talent pool, Devashish, you and your industry peers are, it's a big concern, right? When it comes to especially advanced. So what is the solution there, and how are you trying to address it? Because the demand is only going to go north.
Yes, twofolds. First is reskilling and upskilling. So the people inside the company with traditional skills, there is a skilling up program within the company, how to make them side skilled in order to take these new technologies. And then when we talk of fresh intake of engineers, because we need the scale, we are of course working with academic institutions and edutech partners. So hand in hand. So how the curriculum could have these elements so that at least they are aware. I'm not saying they become fully operational from day one, at least they are aware the context of these technologies. So we are working with many academic institutions to have modules which the car guy or the car enthusiast could pick and then enter the industry with that basic knowledge. And then there are, edutech is a big area of startups. So there are many edutechs which are coming. We are partnering with NASSCOM. I take the example of embedded software. All what we have talked in this forum, the one of the basic skill is embedded software. So that's where we are trying to work as a community to see how we can have certification courses on embedded software with the fresh engineers coming with those certificates, entering the industry, and then let's say a 6 months period to make them start delivering cuts down to 1/3 or half. So that's how I look at it.
Thomas, you come from the Western world and matured markets there. The potential of India, and again addressing this talent challenge. What are the approaches that you think should be taken, and perhaps you're already taking at Wipro?
For us, the impact is very significant at a company level. This is not just engineering services. This is what we call it One Wipro Play, from a disciplines and delivery capabilities perspective. And we're not just looking to transform a vehicle or a mobility services product. This is moving into other areas where we engineer products for our customers, whether it's a medical device, whether it is a lawnmower. These products are being basically disaggregated and moved into a software-defined product world. So it's a huge transformation opportunity for us. It's a huge growth opportunity. I can't disclose numbers, but altogether this has become one of our, let's say, most important transformation opportunities. We hinged this under the brand Cloud Car. This is what we created as a branding for this. It should just express the idea that we work on cloud with cloud native principles on this, and it's really for every engineer. It's an opportunity, whether it's an embedded background, whether it's a cloud engineer. People are coming together on this. And looking at brownfields, you asked to the Western world, there is a lot of, at the moment, brownfield that requires fixing, where teams are really busy in the hamster wheels, keeping the light bulbs on to get the current programs out to feed the pipeline. And we've seen this in large car makers in all North America as well as in Europe. And as they are busy fixing the current environments, they need someone who can actually work on the future very dedicatedly. And we see that there is a willingness to really take a piece and give it to an innovation team, which is also not too much, cling to the brownfield that they're currently all involved. There's a lot of politics going on, different brands sharing engineers, which doesn't go easily. There is numerous coverage in the press about this. And we see that sometimes if you can't solve it in the brownfield, you just have to move it out and give it to some innovation. And the collaboration of the ecosystem that we need, whether it is big tech, whether it's the chipset providers, whether it is the software partners, small and large, that is also something that I think here for India, we have an opportunity to learn faster, to really drive this software ecosystem locally that we have in partnerships, whether it's hyperscalers, big and small software partners, and use also the innovation hubs here, the startups. I think the startup culture is a huge opportunity here in India to develop features that are adding value for those OEMs that come from those startups in the future.
There, last words from you, KSB.
Yeah.
I mean, as an industry body,
Yeah.
you cannot only revise the targets. You have to help them.
I think the key point what all the Shankan have said in this, and with especially Devashish pointed out, is a key opportunity is for co-creation and co-innovation. As Ashley said, it cannot be done by one organization, one person together. The good news is industry is talking about collaboration. The good news is everybody is getting sensitive. If I had to summarize it, what I heard in the conversation, there is a huge focus on standardization. There's huge focus on scale. When I say scale, not only in terms of numbers, but the efforts, mutual collaboration take place. And third, in terms of choosing the choice. Why a few years back, this was given as a topic. This is done. ADAS is done. SDV is done. People are saying, should we focus on electric vehicles? Should we focus on hydrogen fuel, carbon, etc.? The way I look at it is opportunity which will intense, as it is, NASSCOM is getting the industry together. This community, all of us are engaged together. Perhaps there's an opportunity for us to co-create with the ecosystem that you talk about, startup ecosystem, the partner ecosystem, the OEM ecosystem, the tier 1 ecosystem, academic ecosystem. I think sky's the limit. Absolutely, completely we can do it.
Well
There
summed,
you are.
well summed up.
KSB, you helped me by doing the job of concluding, doing the concluding remarks very well. So it becomes my job easier, and I can now only thank you all of you once again on behalf of ETAuto for taking time out for this very, very enriching discussion. A lot of different perspectives, and I'm sure with more collaboration, the journey will be even more exciting and, of course, more innovative as well. And India, as a base, will, of course, play its role as a major global hub for developing many of these new age solutions for deployment globally. So on that note, thank you very much for watching this episode, this discussion of the ER&D industry professionals, along with the representative from NASSCOM. And till we meet again in the next episode with another very interesting theme, please take care. And thanks once again for watching this interview. On behalf of ETAuto, goodbye.